Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Powerful Perspectives. I'd like to try something a little bit new today. As many of you know, I work as a psychotherapist, and what I would like to do, I do have a playlist here that is specifically psychology related. So I do try to categorize some of my content for those who are interested in just things that have to do with therapy, things that have to do with just exploration of the mind, of ourselves, of our relationships, and these types of things. And I want to give some tips specifically that are helpful within that space. One thing that I'd like to try a little bit today and moving forward with some of my videos is to tailor some of my video content specifically to sharing advice, insight, metaphor, just different ideas that I often share in many of my sessions with my clients that a lot of people find helpful. Just kind of different things, different insights that I might bring up within that space, within a clinical or therapeutic space, but that can be helpful to a more generalized audience who might also be interested and curious about some of these things. A lot of these will be inspired by patterns, questions, concerns that are common among people that I meet with in a clinical setting. And so that's part of the reason why I thought, hey, maybe I'll share some of those kind of common patterns, insights, questions, curiosities, issues, concerns, and these types of things. Some of those patterns here. I thought this might be a nice space to kind of disseminate that a little bit more and share it with a wider audience yet. So I hope that some of you might find this useful and interesting, and I would love to hear any feedback that you have. What I'd like to share with you today is a metaphor that I use with a lot of my clients. It has to do with habits, whether that be breaking an unwanted habit, whether that be developing a new habit, anything really that has to do with kind of goal setting and change. And a metaphor that I use a lot in this area is that of a staircase. So if you think of a physical staircase and kind of how we approach it when we're going upstairs, down is a different story, but I usually use the metaphor of thinking of going up the stairs, right? Ascending. So climbing a staircase. If you think of a physical staircase, most of us take it at one step at a time. If you have a little bit more extra energy or a bit of a pep in your step, you can usually maybe take it at 2 steps, and that's comfortable, I think, for most people. For most of us, getting into 3 steps at a time, that's a bit more of a stretch, right? It takes more concentration, takes more effort, and it's not as smooth, it's not as steady, it's not as consistent or as there's more resistance, right? It's not as sustainable. And so if you think about that with regards to, a physical staircase, I think the metaphor kind of lands, right? We kind of, that makes sense to us in terms of our physical experience. Now, if you imagine within that same kind of image, imagine trying to jump from, let's say, the bottom step to the 7th step, or the 10th step, or the 12th step, right? That's quite a feat. Now, could it be attempted? Sure, you could try. Most of us, you'd have to probably take a bit of a running start, right, and get some momentum to throw yourself up and try to make, let's say, that 7th step. Could you make it? Maybe. It's possible. But it's a lot more probable that the person who's trying to jump, that many steps at once would slip, miss, fall, and hurt themselves. Now, when and if, well, less of an if, more of a when, right, this happens, as the probability is higher for, for failure in that instance than it is for success, who do we blame? Do we blame the person, or do we blame just the hilarity and ridiculousness of the expectation? Normally we kind of look at the choice, right? We think, oh, well, who could make that leap anyway, right? It's not many people are going to be able to jump from step 1 to step 7, let's say, without slipping and hurting themselves. And so the expected is for us to slip and hurt ourselves, and we don't blame the person, we blame kind of the silliness of the expectation or the goal. Now, again, like all of this, I think makes sense, I hope, to most of us within a physical picture or a physical, example of that staircase. Where we get kind of tripped up a little bit is when we take this and we apply it to other types of goals. So when we use it as a metaphor for emotional goals, mental goals, any kind of like habit. So let's say, for example, someone wants to implement more exercise into their life. And let's say that they currently don't exercise like hardly at all, like maybe once a month, let's say. And they want to change to exercising 3 times a week, right? So that's a significant change. We can say that that's similar in some ways, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of the ratios, but that's similar in some ways to saying, okay, we're going to jump from the first step to the 7th step, right? And sometimes we go into the habit or the change of lifestyle, and we go in with this assumption that I should be able to do this, right? We don't apply the same understanding, the same grace, the same patience that we would with a physical example, right? We don't see this as like a physical staircase. We somehow apply a different type of rubric when we try to establish other types of, goals or habits. And we do tend to, in this case, at least, especially with ourselves, sometimes with each other too, but certainly with ourselves, we do tend to be a lot more self-critical, and we tend to blame the person. We blame ourselves for not being able to make that quantum leap, and not being able to make that quicker change or, that jump, whereas we kind of assume that other people can. And then when that challenge comes, or when that failure comes, when we slip, miss, hurt ourselves, whatever the case may be, even if let's say by some fluke, we do try to jump maybe to the 4th step or whatever, and let's say that we do make it, but we made it because that first time we had a bit of a running start and we got some momentum. But how sustainable is that? Especially, if you don't have the space to go back and take the running start each time, right? Like the staircase doesn't have a landing necessarily where you have the space to charge up for each additional jump, right? We don't always have that luxury. And so the sustainability of that is a lot more challenged. And even, if you could, let's say, make those kind of quantum leaps, they're going to take longer resting periods in between. It's going to take more time, more effort, more preparation. And so it's actually less effective, and it gets you where you want to go less quickly, less safely, and less reliably than it does actually breaking it down and taking those smaller steps. So if we can kind of remind ourselves and remember, to use this kind of physical metaphor of a staircase and apply similar principles to ourselves when we're making other types of goals, whether it be, trying to introduce a new exercise regime, whether it be, especially in examples of addiction, right? When we're trying to avoid a certain behavior or substance that has become like a really ingrained habit for a long time. It's going to be those incremental changes that are small enough. The idea with any kind of change is that we want it to stretch us without overwhelming us. So we don't want it to be so much that we just kind of panic and avoid it, because it feels like it's too big. And we don't want it to be so big that even if we do, by some, I don't want to say fluke, but by some miracle or by some, twist of fate, like let's say that we do make a big change once, but then that kind of becomes a new expectation or standard, and then we beat ourselves up on it, if we can't hit that consistently afterwards. It's too big of an expectation, right? Break it down to 1, maybe 2 steps at a time. What I like to encourage people to do is set a really low standard for your expectation. Again, something that stretches you outside of kind of your fallback. So outside of whatever your normal kind of like automatic response is right now, whatever is running on autopilot, it should stretch you outside of that in the sense that it requires a little bit of effort and attention, right? So it requires effort and attention, which stretches you outside of kind of the normal, just, you know, your normal pace or automatic right now. Just stretch you outside of that, but not be so much that it overwhelms. So you find that sweet spot, and then, you know, to take us back to like the staircase kind of metaphor, let's say that we call that, you know, one step. You know, you find that one step that works for you, and then the second step, you let that be a pleasant surprise. You know, like if you have a bit of extra energy in a day and you have that pep in your step and you're able to skip a step here or there and do 2 at a time, great, that's wonderful. And you take that as a pleasant surprise and as something that you're able to do, you know, with extra energy that you have at your disposal when and if you have it at your disposal, but you don't hold yourself to that as the consistent standard. The standard should be something that is ideally sustainable, right? That stretches, but it's sustainable. So take that metaphor, you know, think about it. Let's try it on for size. You know, I'd love to hear any success stories or any questions about it, any further questions, comments, ideas, elaborations. I'd love to hear any of that feedback. And I'll see you guys the next time. Bye for now. Hello everyone, thank you for watching my video to the end. I hope that you really enjoyed it and gained something insightful from it. I would love to hear any thoughts, reflections, ideas, comments in the comment section below. As many of you know, I am trained as a clinical psychotherapist, and I'm excited to announce that I'm currently accepting new clients. I am based out of Calgary, Alberta, so I'm working right now out of Kensington. And I'm also happy to meet with people online or remotely, whether within Alberta or across Canada. So if that is of interest to any of you, if any of you think that we might be a good fit and you're looking for a therapist, then please feel free to check out my bios. I have a couple different profiles, one for in-person and one kind of for all over in Canada. So I'll include those links below in the description of this video, and you can feel free to look at those and set up an appointment. I'd love to meet with you and see how we can work together. Until then, wishing you all the best, and I'll see you again soon.